I'm Samantha Foster, and this is Venus Mastermind, a space for honest reflection, pattern breaking, and sovereign thinking. I'm not here to perform or to teach in a formal way. This is a shared reflection, a place to think out loud, to name what's been living in me, and to speak honestly about what I'm seeing and integrating. There's no agenda here beyond truth and presence. If something here resonates, take what's yours and leave the rest. Welcome back. Today we step into level 2 of the self-led path, shadow work. And before we go anywhere, I want to sit with what this level actually is, because I spent years blaming myself for decisions I couldn't understand, decisions that made no sense, decisions I'd swear I'd never make again, and then make again anyway. I thought I was the problem. I thought something in me was just broken. I had to learn the truth the long way, by living it, by paying for it, and eventually by sitting across from other people, watching them carry the exact same thing. Shadow work has been turned into something it isn't, something mystical, something dark, something that sounds like we have to go digging through the worst parts of ourselves and come back with a list of everything that's wrong with us. And honestly, I think that's why so many of us avoid it. We think it's going to be an excavation of our flaws. It isn't. That's not what this is at all. The shadow is a set of patterns we built a long time ago, mostly when we were very young. We built them to survive, to be approved of, to stay safe, to belong, and they're still running underneath everything. The hidden reasons behind the things we do, the reactions that fire before we get a say, the decisions we make that we swore we'd never make again, and the quiet, invisible ways we keep getting in our own way, without ever once realizing that we're the one doing it. And the question I keep coming back to with this work, the one that lives underneath this whole level, is one we've probably been asking quietly for a long time, in 1,000 small ways, without ever putting it into words. If I know what's right for me, why don't I do it? Not, why am I lazy? Not, why am I broken? Not, why I can't get it together. Just, why, when I know better, do I keep choosing against myself? Because that's the question that actually matters at this stage. And the answer isn't a character flaw. The answer lives in the shadow. And the most honest place to start is the place where most of us feel the shadow long before we understand a single thing about it, the trigger. So let's start right there, where the heat rises. The trigger. A trigger is a high-intensity emotional response. Something happens, someone says a thing, a moment turns, a look lands a certain way, and the intensity just spikes. We feel the heat come up, the flush, the chest goes tight, or the stomach drops, and the whole system goes hot and fast. You know the feeling. We all know the feeling. And here's the part almost nobody names. When the intensity is that high, we make terrible decisions almost every single time. Not because we're weak, not because we don't know better, because the intensity itself is what's making the choice, and the intensity does not have our best interest in mind. Think about it. When we're calm, when we're settled, when we're actually here, we make good decisions. We weigh things. We know what we want. But the second that trigger fires and the intensity goes through the roof, we choose badly. The same person who, an hour earlier, knew exactly what they wanted. Same values, same clarity. The only thing that changed is the heat, right? We don't catch it happening. That's what keeps us stuck. The trigger fires faster than thought. The intensity grabs the wheel, and our thinking mind only shows up afterward, just in time to sit in the wreckage and wonder why on earth we did that again. Let me give you a real one, because this isn't theory. This happens every single day in people's actual lives.
What this costs.
There was a relationship I needed to leave, and I knew it. I want to be clear about that part, because it matters. My judgment was sound. This was not a good person, and the situation was not safe, and I made the decision to be out. Clear, knowing. The self-led part of me did exactly what she was supposed to do. She saw it, and she chose herself, and she left. And then my sister called, because this person I left had called her, crying. And my sister got on the phone with me and said, "How could you do that to them? How could you hurt that person? What are you doing?" And the heat came up. That's the trigger. Right there. Not the relationship, the scolding. Somebody I loved disapproving of me, telling me I'd hurt someone. And underneath it, that old familiar flood of feeling that I was the bad one, that I'd done something wrong, that I needed to fix it fast, to make that feeling stop. And from inside that intensity, not from my judgment, not from my knowing, from the heat, I reversed the decision. I went back and I married him. And it was a disaster. It cost years. It put people I love in harm's way. It became one of the most damaging chapters of my entire life. And I want you to hear the mechanism underneath all of it, because this is the whole teaching of this episode. If I hadn't had that trigger, I would have kept my sound judgment. I would never have married him. That's it. That's the shadow. My knowing was right. My values were right. My original decision was right. But a trigger, someone's disapproval, making me feel like the bad person, was wired deep enough to override all of it, to reverse a correct decision and send my life down a road that hurt me and hurt the people I loved for years. And here's why I'm telling you this. The stakes aren't always a marriage. Most days they're smaller, but the mechanism is exactly the same, and it's running in people's lives every single day. We know the right thing. We've decided the right thing. And then someone disapproves, or someone pushes, or the heat comes up some other way, and we abandon our own knowing to make that intensity stop, and we pay for it. Sometimes for a long, long time. We see the pattern. We are not the pattern. We are the one who's finally seeing it.
It runs in both directions.
Now, that example is the kind we expect. Something hard happens. The heat comes up, and we make the bad call. Criticism, disapproval, conflict. The trigger fires, and we either shrink and fold, or we blow the whole thing up. Either way, the intensity chose, and we lived with it. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. The trigger doesn't only fire when something bad happens. It fires when something good happens too. Something genuinely good shows up. Praise, recognition, an opportunity, someone seeing us and valuing us and offering us the very thing we said we wanted. And the intensity spikes the same way it does under criticism, because the same unworthiness lives underneath both of them. And from inside that spike, we don't step into the good thing. We sabotage it. We pull back. We undercut it. We find some way to wreck it right as it gets close. Not because we don't want it, because the good thing fired the very same trigger the bad thing does, and the part of us underneath couldn't hold it. And just like before, we don't realize we're the one doing it. It doesn't feel like a sabotaging. It just feels like the good thing slipped away again. the way it always seems to. Let me give you the smallest version of this first. Because once we see it small, we start seeing it everywhere. Someone says, "You look amazing. You look beautiful." And what do? No, I don't. Not me. And we start pointing at everything we think is wrong with us. We list our own faults. We hand them the evidence for why the compliment doesn't belong to us. That's a trigger. That's the exact same heat. It just got lit by something kind instead of something cruel. The recognition came in, the pressure came up, and we rejected it. We refused the good thing the second it arrived. Now watch the same trigger play out somewhere it actually cost us. Someone we work for says, "You're doing an amazing job. We want to promote you." And the heat comes up. That same flesh, that same tension. And here's what happens. And we don't even know we're doing it. The work starts to slip. We start missing days. Something in us starts quietly making sure that promotion doesn't come through. Not on purpose, not anywhere we can see, but the recognition lit the trigger. And underneath the trigger is the part of us that doesn't feel worthy of being seen that way. And so we make sure we won't be. And here's the deepest part of it, the part almost nobody has ever had named for them. We sabotage it so that people see us the way we already see ourselves. Being recognized as worthy contradicts the story we've been carrying about who we are. And that contradiction is unbearable. So we correct it. We pull the outside world back into line with the inside one. We'd rather stay small and consistent than be seen as more than we believe we are. It happens in love too. A genuinely good person wants to be with us. Someone kind, someone steady, someone who actually sees us. And instead of letting it in, we don't feel worthy of them. So we do something. We find a way to show them we're not worthy. We sabotage it before it can become real. Not because we didn't want it, because the good thing fired the very same trigger the bad thing does. And that's a cruel little mechanism inside all of it. When we reject the recognition, when we point out our faults, when we insist we don't deserve it, the other person eventually believes us. They take us at our word. Your wish is my command. The praise stops coming. The promotion goes to someone else. The good person moves on, and we get to be right about ourselves. We trained the whole world to see us exactly the way we already did. That's the trigger, doing its quiet work in the dark while we call it bad luck. That's the shadow showing us its second face, and it's sneakier than the first one. When we blow up under criticism, at least we know something happened. There's smoke. There's a mess. We can see it. But the quiet sabotage of a good thing doesn't announce itself at all. It just looks like a life where the good thing never quite worked out. And we spend years believing that's simply our luck, when all along it's been a pattern, doing exactly what it was built to do. And once we can see it firing in both directions, the bigger picture starts to come into view.
The wider field.
The trigger is the doorway. It's the part of the shadow we feel most directly because it comes with all that heat. We can't miss it. But once we're through that door, we start to notice the shadow shows up in quieter ways too, ways that don't announce themselves with a flush. It shows up in self-sabotage that isn't hot at all, just a slow, quiet turning away from the things we say we want. It shows up in performance, the version of ourselves we put on for certain rooms, certain people, the self we perform instead of the self we are. It shows up in the patterns we run in our relationships, with money, with our work, the same shapes repeating, the same endings arriving. No matter how different the beginning looked, right? We've all watched ourselves end up in the same place with completely different people. And underneath all of it is hidden motivation we usually can't see. The behavior on the surface almost never tells the truth about what's actually driving it. The procrastination isn't laziness. The overgiving isn't generosity. The fight we pick isn't really about the thing we're fighting about. There's something underneath, something protective, something old. And until we can see it, we keep mistaking the surface for the whole story. That's the work of this level, not scrubbing the surface behavior, seeing the motivation underneath it, bringing the hidden thing into the light, where it loses the power to run us without our knowing. And the reason we can't just decide our way out of it is worth being really honest about.
Why we can't just decide our way out.
Most of us, the second we see the pattern, try to discipline our way past it. We decide we're going to stay calm next time. We're not going to shrink. We're not going to explode. We're not going to sabotage the good thing. We make the decision clearly in a calm moment, and we mean it with our whole heart. And then the trigger fires, and the intensity takes the will, and we do the exact thing we swore we wouldn't do. This is not weakness. I need us to really hear that. The decision we made in the calm moment was a thinking mind decision. The trigger doesn't live in that thinking mind. It lives underneath, wired in yang, running faster than thought. We cannot outdecide it in the moment, because by the time our thinking mind shows up to vote, the intensity has already chosen, and we're already 3 sentences into the thing we didn't want to say. So we end up in the loop. We resolve to do better. The trigger fires. We do the old thing. We turn on ourselves. We resolve again. And after enough rounds of that, we start to believe the cruelest story of all, that we're the problem, that something in us is just broken, that everybody else can hold it together and we're the ones who can't. That story is not true. We've just been trying to solve a problem with the one tool that was never going to reach it. It was never going to work, not because of us, but because of where the trigger actually lives, which is exactly why this work reaches for something that can get to that layer.
We have tools now.
A trigger doesn't resolve through willpower. And here's the part that surprises people. It doesn't fully resolve through understanding alone either. We can know exactly where it came from. We can trace it all the way back to the moment it got built, and it can still fire with the very same intensity the next time someone pushes the right button. Insight matters. It's just not always enough on its own. And here's where I think we're genuinely fortunate. In a way, our parents weren't. In a way, our grandparents weren't. They lived with these same triggers their whole lives. They passed them down without ever knowing they were doing it, because nobody had language for any of this. Nobody told them it could be different. They just called it personality. They called it temper. They called it the way I am, and they carried it to the end. We don't have to. That's the part that still moves me. We actually have tools now. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistics programming, somatic work, real ways to reach the layer where the trigger lives and help it loosen. Tools that can support the forgiveness, support the understanding, support the slow neutralizing of a pattern that's been firing since before we can remember. I'm not going to turn this into a lesson on any of them. That's not what this is. I just want us to feel the weight of it for a second. We are the first generation that gets to put these patterns down instead of passing them on. And sometimes the hardest part isn't neutralizing the pattern. It's finding it in the first place, because the subconscious one don't show themselves. We can look at our own life for years and still not see the shape we keep repeating. That's where I found astrology to be a genuinely powerful mirror. A birth chart can show us the patterns we came in carrying, the subconscious ones, the ones we can't quite name by looking at our life head on. It's not fortune telling, it's pattern recognition, another way of seeing what's been running underneath us when the seeing is the very thing we're struggling to do. And when a trigger starts to neutralize, however we get there, something specific happens. The intensity doesn't spike the same way anymore. And in the space where that spike used to be, there's suddenly a choice. We feel the old things start to rise. And for the first time, we get to make a different decision than the one that used to sabotage us. The thinking mind finally gets to be the one choosing, not the heat. Imagine that for a second. The phone call comes, the disapproval lands, and instead of the flood taking over, there's just a little space. And in that space, we get to keep our own sound judgment. We get to stay with what we already knew was right. And there's a piece of this that matters more than any tool.
Self-forgiveness.
When we finally see the pattern, really see it, see how long it's been running, see what it cost us, the relationships, the opportunities, the years, the very first thing most of us do is turn on ourselves. I see it all the time in this work. Someone sees clearly for the first time how their younger self responded in some moment, and they're ashamed of it. They can't forgive that version of themselves for folding, for exploding, for going back, for the thing they're still doing now, because the trigger is still there. There's so much shame in it. But that younger self wasn't doing anything wrong. I need us to really sit with this one. That younger self was protecting us the only way they knew how. The shrinking, the going back, the sabotaging, that was survival. It was a learned pattern that kept us safe, or kept us loved, or kept us belonging at a time when those things genuinely felt like they were on the line. When I went back to that relationship, the part of me that couldn't bear my sister's disapproval was the same part that learned a long time ago that someone being upset with me meant I was bad and I had to fix it. That part wasn't weak. It was running the program that once kept it safe. That's the reframe that changes everything. We weren't broken. We weren't stupid. We weren't weak. We were living exactly what was ingrained in us as children. These triggers don't serve us anymore, but they did once. They protected us once. They earned their place once. And the part of us that built them deserves our gratitude, not our contempt. And when we can hold it that way, with understanding instead of blame, with forgiveness instead of shame, something releases that no technique on its own can reach. Because the shame was its own trigger. The self-blame was its own pattern. Setting it down is part of the work, not the prize we get at the end of it. And let me be clear about something, because people get scared of this work. None of this means we walk around with no emotions. It never meant that. The triggers running our decisions and the rich, full emotional life we're meant to have, those are not the same thing. Neutralizing a trigger doesn't flatten us out. It frees us. It frees us to feel all of it, and to finally stop being driven by the one old intensity that keeps making the choice for us. And once that intensity stops running the show, something opens up that's almost impossible to describe until you lived it.
What opens up?
I want to name what life actually feels like on the other side of this, because we spend so much time talking about what the triggers cost and almost no time talking about the relief. And it is a relief. It's one of the biggest reliefs there is. You can breathe. That's the first thing. the thing that's been sitting on your chest for as long as you can remember just isn't there the same way anymore. You don't have to respond in the ways that hurt you anymore. The whole exhausting cycle, the heat, the reaction, the regret, the cleanup, it stops. And the quiet that comes in where it used to be is something most of us have never felt in our adult lives. Other people's opinions stop carrying the weight they used to. And I know how impossible that sounds from where some of us are sitting right now. Because when you're still living inside the trigger, someone's disapproval can rearrange your entire day, your entire decision, your entire life, like it did mine. But on the other side of the work, it just doesn't. Someone can think what they think, and it doesn't move you off your own ground. It's genuinely hard to imagine until you feel it for the first time, and then you wonder how you ever lived the other way. Life gets quiet, drama-free, in a way that almost feels strange at first. And it's not because we got better at managing the chaos. It's because we start making our decisions from a completely different place, from whatever keeps our life undisturbed. We start to actually feel the peace, and then something interesting happens. We start to like it. We start to want to protect it. We get protective of our space, our calm, our quiet, and we stop letting in the things and the people that disturb it, not from walls, from self-respect. And this is a beautiful place to be. I mean that. After a lifetime of intensity running the show, getting to live from peace is its own kind of homecoming. It's also, and this is the part that matters for where we're going next, the exact place that makes the next level possible. Because the body can't do its work while it's still drowning in the chemistry of the trigger. It's only when this piece opens up that the body can finally start to learn a new way of being, to run on calm instead of cortisol, to discover that it's okay to not be doing anything, that it's okay to not live in hypervigilance, braced for the next threat, that it's safe now to just be. And that's exactly the doorway we walk through next. Because even here, even in the peace, the body still has some catching up to do.
The body still reacts.
And yet, here's the honest part. Even with the peace opening up, even with our thinking mind clear and our choice back, the body still reacts. The heat still comes up, at least at first. The chest still tightens. The whole system still braces the way it always has, because the body is used to the pattern. The body has been running this exact response for years, sometimes for decades. And here's the truth that took me a long time to learn in my own life. The mind can be completely clear, and the body can still be holding all of it. That's not failure. That's not the work not working. That is the body doing exactly what bodies do. The body keeps the score. It carries what we've lived, the hardship, the stress, every single thing that ever got stored and never got released. And our mental and emotional healing, as real and as hard won as it is, does not automatically reach the body. The body has its own timeline. The body needs its own work. So now, the thinking mind gets to do something brand new. It feels the body react, and it makes the different choice anyway. And every single time it does, the body gets a little more information that the old pattern isn't running anymore, that this isn't the old danger, that we are safe now. And slowly, with time, with patience, the body learns to re-regulate, to stop bracing for a threat that isn't there anymore. That re-regulation, the body finally catching up to what the mind already knows, is its own thing entirely. It's why the body still reacting isn't something to be ashamed of. It's simply the next place the whole conversation goes. So let me leave us somewhere quiet before we close. Because here's the thing I keep coming back to. We can see the pattern clearly, understand exactly where it came from, forgive the part of us that built it, and the body can still hold it for a while longer. The seeing and the feeling free of it don't always arrive together, and that's not a failure. It's just the truth of being a person who has lived a life. So I'll just leave us with a few things to wonder about. Nothing to answer, nothing to solve, just questions worth turning over in whatever quiet we find. Where does the heat rise, and what does it talk me into? Whose disapproval can still reverse a decision I know is right? What good thing have I been quietly sabotaging and calling it bad luck? There's no wrong answer to any of those. There's only the honest one. And just noticing, just catching the heat as it rises in that small space before it decides for us, changes more than it seems like it should. And if we find that the seeing isn't enough, that the trigger still fires, even when we understand it completely, that's not a verdict on us. That's just the trigger showing us where it actually lives. Nobody built these patterns on purpose, and nobody was ever meant to carry them forever. The part of us that built the trigger was only ever trying to keep us safe. It doesn't need our blame. It needs our thanks. And to finally hear that the danger is over. The trigger was old protection. You are the one who gets to choose now. You always were. I'll see you next week when we step into level 3, body integration, where the body finally gets to catch up to everything the mind has come to know. I'm going to pause here and let this land. If something in this resonated, you don't need to do anything with it. Just sit with it and notice what continues to unfold. Thank you for listening and for being here with me.